Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast in association with MMA Play 365, giving you the edge in MMA betting. I'm your host as always, Newson, with your co-host John, and tonight we're back once again to break down UFC 247 from Houston, Texas. John, welcome. How are you doing tonight, man?
Hey there, man. I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. Looking forward to breaking down another card. We've got the return of Jon Jones, and it's always interesting when there's a Jon Jones fight card, so I'm looking forward to it, man.
Absolutely. And just before we start, as always, we need to mention MMA Play 365. For those who missed the announcement before UFC 246, MMA Play 365 had some big news, and we have partnered with a world-leading AI, artificial intelligence sports prediction company called Sporter. Sporter produce highly accurate outcomes across multiple sports using computer-based algorithms in their self-learning software. They're currently in MMA, boxing, baseball, and football, so soccer to you guys over the pond. And in those respective sports, they've partnered with globally huge organisations to utilise their services. For more information on Sporter and the partnership, you can find the article on the Newsome MMA website, or you can just Google something generic such as MMA Play 365 Sporter, and the article will appear. As for the last event at UFC 246, we had some phenomenal results at MMA Play 365. The Dog of the Week won. All the recommended bets for the long-term gamblers won. All of the official bets from the handicapper cashed. One of the 3 fun parlays cashed. 10 out of the 14 parlay pieces in the Create Your Own ACCA section won. And Sporter's AI predictions correctly predicted 4 out of 5 winners too. So everybody was a winner. And with the great news out of the way, let's break down some fights at UFC 247. This week, the Newsome MMA main card is simply just a main card of the UFC 247 pay-per-view section, as these are the fights that we think deserve that little bit more breakdown time. So in the main event of UFC 247, we have the return of the pound-for-pound greatest fighter of all time, Jon Bones Jones, back in the cage once again to fight the hugely once-touted prospect but now turned title challenger Dominick Reyes. Jon Jones currently sitting as the minus 400 favourite. The comeback on Reyes at plus 350. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting fight, because we've seen in the last few fights of Jon Jones, people have just started to doubt him a little bit. There's that little element of doubt with creeping in. I mean, the Gustafsson fight, I know I picked him on the podcast. I picked Gustafsson to get the win there and take the belt. Obviously, that didn't quite turn out as planned, and Jones put in a good performance. But his last 2 fights against Anthony Smith and Thiago Santos, especially that Santos fight, the last fight, very, very close split decision victory. People have just started to doubt now whether Jon Jones is on the decline, and whether he's people are starting to catch up with his skill set. People are starting to kind of suss out his style and suss out a way in which to beat him. And it's really interesting with Jon Jones, because I think he has mentioned this before himself, and I'm very much of the belief, watching him as well, that he fights to a level of his opposition. When you look at his opposition and he's fighting somebody tougher on paper, I always think he turns it up a notch, and he performs better. We've seen that in the Daniel Cormier fights. Obviously, I know the second DC fight got overturned to a no contest. We saw that in the second Alexander Gustafsson fight. We've seen it in fights previously against the likes of Glover Teixeira. Teixeira was on a huge tear then, and Jon Jones beat Teixeira at his own game. Now, I know that we're going back some time for those fights, but out of his recent fights, if you look from Ovince Prue onwards, his 2 best performances have come against Daniel Cormier, which obviously I mentioned was overturned to a no contest, and Alexander Gustafsson, who you'd look at, pretty much anybody would look at on paper and go, they're the 2 standout names on that sheet out of OSP, Cormier, Gustafsson, Anthony Smith, Thiago Santos. Now he's coming up against Dominick Reyes, who you say is a young, hungry up-and-comer. And I really like Reyes. I really like his style. He's got a good blend of boxing mixed in with his kicks. We've seen that he's got power. I mean, we've seen that against Jared Cannonier. He put him out in round 1. Joachim Christensen, he put him out in round 1. And then Chris Weidman in his last fight, he put him out in round 1. And I'm of the belief that you've mentioned this before, that I do think that Jon Jones is on a slight decline. I do think at some point in the quite near future, he is due to take that first real L, excluding the Matt Hamill disqualification. But for me, I'm not sure if Dominick Reyes is the guy to do it. I mean, Jones has seen everything before with strikers. I mean, he's gone up against some fantastic opposition previously. Thiago Santos, very dangerous with his kicks, extremely quick with his kicks. And for me, Reyes' kicks are his best weapon, and I don't know whether Reyes' kicks are as good as Thiago Santos. Thiago Santos had some real success early on with those low calf kicks, but Jones started to get the read on them. He started to check a few. Obviously, the injury happened to Thiago Santos where he blew out the knees, but that was partly due to the fact that Jones was reading those leg kicks and making him mistime them and land awkwardly on them. And for me, if Santos, although it was a very close fight and possibly if Santos hadn't got the injuries, you never know what could have happened. But if Santos can't do it with that explosive style, those kicks, I don't know whether Dominick Reyes can. I mean, not discluding his boxing in the slightest, he's a very good boxer as well. We saw that in the Weidman fight, breaking and then landing the heavy hands and the ground and pound. But for me, Weidman, when you look at his record recently, he's getting to the point now where he's got to seriously start considering whether his future is in mixed martial arts, because he's taken some huge L's recently. I don't know what we can really take from that, the level we can take from that. Ozdemir fight was very close. People argued that Volkan Ozdemir won that fight. I still think that Reyes edged it looking back. But I just don't think there's anything that Reyes is going to be able to do that John Jones hasn't seen before, and that he'll be able to counteract. I think in order to beat John Jones, you have to be a combination of technical but aggressive. I don't think you can just try and stand and allow him his time and his range and try and out technical John Jones, because you're going to lose. And I don't. And for me, Thiago Santos, with his wild style, with his you never know when he's going to pull out a crazy wheel kick or anything like that. And for me, he's the kind of guy that stands the best chance at the moment of beating John Jones. And I don't think Reyes is that kind of style. I think he's getting to the point now where he's a bit more, I don't want to say cautious, but he doesn't throw caution to the wind quite as much as a Thiago Santos would, or that kind of wild unpredictableness, so to speak. So for me, I think John Jones, I think it could be another fight that goes the distance. Reyes is a tough guy. Jones seems to have, last couple of fights, been happy just to kind of cruise through the rounds and not really push for the finish. But I think it's going to be another fight similar to Anthony Smith. I think maybe a little bit closer than the Anthony Smith fight, but I think that John Jones is going to have enough in his locker to be able to be more technical than Dominick Reyes. I think he'll start to read those kicks and start to time his attacks and counter Reyes. And for that reason, I think that John Jones is going to remain and still the light heavyweight champion and get the win via decision.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke about decline, and it was something that I spent quite a few minutes of back on the UFC 239 podcast, and it's something that I still stand by. I genuinely think he's on a decline, and like I said, I'm not going to go over exactly what I went over on the UFC 239 podcast. If you want that full detailed breakdown of why I think he's on a decline, then just hit up the YouTube channel and or any of the platforms, Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, and go back and listen to that episode. But he's not the same fighter as what he was sort of 5 or 6 years ago, so I still stand by the fact that he is on a slight decline. However, when you're looking back watching tape on John Jones, one thing that I really noticed this time around, and it really came to light during that last fight against Thiago Santos, is he is on a decline in regards to his output, his finishing ability, his crazy, flashy highlight reel strikes. But the one thing in that decline that I think he's got stronger in is his defensive ability. Now, in that Thiago Santos fight, honestly, his awareness of danger and being able to see strikes coming before they're even anywhere close to hitting him is just unbelievable. And this is actually one reason why I think that this fight with Dominick Reyes is going to be much easier for him than his last fight, which is crazy considering the betting lines are a lot lower this time. Now, I took Thiago Santos in that last fight. The reason why I took him in that fight, I even bet him small as well at plus 600, which, for a plus 600 fighter in the eyes of the bookie, that was I was one judge away of cashing that huge underdog. So it was very close. Now, the reason why I bet Thiago Santos in that fight is because, like you said, Jon Jones has seen everything, and it's almost hard to pick a style that is best suited to beating Jon Jones. And the one sort of trait or attribute of Thiago Santos that I thought would actually maybe catch Jon Jones off guard, and again you touched upon it, John, is the explosiveness of the dude, the coming forward with the big kick or the big hook, and Jon Jones dealt with it. So it's another thing that you can sort of tick off the list on styles that might be Jon Jones. In regards to Dominick Reyes, he does have power in his hands. Of course he does. He's got so many knockouts and he is a sniper, especially that straight left down the pipe, man. But I just don't think that's enough to beat Jon Jones. He has, Dominick Reyes has wrestling. He's taken fighters down before. He's grappled. He's worked on the mat. But again, is he going to present anything to Jon Jones that Jones just hasn't seen or dealt with before and beaten before? I don't think he has. And the other thing with Reyes as well, the real big concern for me with Reyes is when you look back at his previous fights, he's very strong in round one. And I know he's come strong in later in fights as well, but the sharpness, the power, the accuracy and the hunger of Dominick Reyes does tend to wane a little bit the longer the fight goes on. And like I say, I'm not saying he's not dangerous in round 2 or 3. Of course he is, but I'm just saying he is absolutely at his best in round 1, and then sort of, like I say, everything just starts falling a little bit shorter the longer the fight goes on. And I almost think that gives him a 1-round window against Jon Jones. I think he's got a round to knock him out, and I actually think that he can be dangerous in that first round for Jon Jones. Jon Jones has got to be careful. He's got to watch himself in round 1. But I think if it gets out of round 1, it's just going to get easier and easier for Jon Jones as the fight goes on, unless he gets sloppy and gets caught. But like I say, there's no historic proof to tell me that that's going to happen. I think his defensive awareness is going to be key. I think once he gets out of that first round with Reyes, I think it's going to be a simpler fight for him. I think Jon Jones, again, I think he's just going to put on a more of a technical clinic opposed to, rushing for a finish or anything like that. So, yeah, I've got Jon Jones to win this fight, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. And in the next fight, in the co-main event, it's another championship fight in the women's flyweight division. We've got Valentina Shevchenko against Katlyn Chookagian. Shevchenko currently sitting as a minus 1,000 favourite, the biggest favourite on the card, with the comeback on Katlyn Chookagian at plus 650. John, who have you got?
Yeah, it's hard to, for me anyway, it's hard for me to get too overexcited about this fight because I think it's going to be quite one-sided and quite dominant, and I think I've probably given it away straight away as to who I'm going to be picking in this fight. But yeah, for me, Valentina Shevchenko is someone who's going to stay on top of this division for quite a long time. I mean, she's such a well-rounded fighter. She's so dangerous everywhere. She's when you look at her record, the only losses that she's got to Liz Carmouche way back in 2010, and then the 2 losses, of course, to Amanda Nunes, the second one of which was extremely close. And Amanda Nunes is arguably the greatest female mixed martial artist of all time. That was only a couple of years ago, back in 2017. Obviously, Nunes as well, when you look at her, she's a lot physically bigger and more physically imposing than Shevchenko, and Shevchenko more than held her own in that fight, and I have seen people argue that Shevchenko won that fight as well and should have got the nod in the judges' eyes. But yeah, she's just such a dangerous fighter because she is so well-rounded. Her striking's good. She can fight going forward, she can fight moving backwards. She's quick. I mean, the speed in which she threw out that high kick against Jessica Ryan, the way that she sets her strikes up as well. Low leg kick, body kick, and then fires out the head kick to completely stun Jessica Ryan and put her out, man. That was a brutal knockout as well. She was out for some time as well, and I mean, when you look, she dealt well with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who obviously we know is a very, very dangerous fighter herself. Got past Liz Carmouche with relative ease in the last fight. So I think it's going to be a really hard fight for Katlyn Chookagian. I think it's going to be really hard for her to to really impose her skill set in this fight. And when you look at Chookagian, the two things that spring to mind, her strengths are the jab and the leg kick, the low calf kick. She does utilise that low calf kick well. She does utilise the jab well. She jabs from range as well. So she can keep the fight at her distance, and she does it well. She does it to good effect. But we've seen recently. I mean, it was only a couple of fights ago that she lost that split decision to Jessica Eye, which saw Jessica Eye get the title shot. Since then, she's gone on to beat Jojo Calderwood and Jennifer Maia. But for me, these fighters just aren't on the same level as Valentina Shevchenko. And if Chookagian's going to win this fight, I think she's going to have to really, really chop down that leg of Shevchenko's very early on, make her pretty much immobile, and then just try to pick her off from the outside. But I think that Valentina Shevchenko is such a good all-round mixed martial artist. She reads the fight so well. She reads her opponents well. She knows when to come forward. She knows when to back off and counter. I just don't think Chookagian is going to be able to impose that game plan now. If Chookagian, like I say, if she does manage to land some heavy calf kicks and try and stifle the movement of Shevchenko, and then she can start working that jab and finding the range and take a few rounds early on, it'll be interesting to see Shevchenko when she has to come forward and constantly come on the attack. But she's got so many weapons. I mean, she's got good wrestling as well. People forget about her wrestling. They just think she's all striking because she has got that huge variety, head kicks, spinning attacks. But she's got good wrestling as well, and she utilises it and she mixes it in there so well. So for me, there's only one winner in this fight, and I think it's going to be Valentina Shevchenko. Chookagian's a tough opposition. I think it's another fight that's going to go to a decision. But yeah, again, for me, it's going to be and still Valentina Shevchenko to get the win via decision.
Yeah, man, it's always dangerous words saying there's only one winner in this fight for sure. But no, I get it, man. There's a reason why she's a minus 1,000 favourite. And, just quickly on that betting line as well, firstly, I think it's slightly off. I would edge towards the opener, which opened at sort of like minus 500, minus 600, I think, as being, a lot more justified. But, again, I do get it at the same time as well, just because she has been so dominant. But the other side to this betting line as well, and it's something I was thinking about earlier on, in 4 of her last 5 fights, she's hit the minus 1,000 range or more. The only one she didn't was against Juan in Jacek, which was around a minus 300 favourite, I believe. Valentina Shevchenko is going to lose at some point. And I just feel that with the trend in her fights and the betting lines sort of being at minus 1,000 or more at some point, someone's going to cash really big on that underdog when she does lose. But as good as Chookagian is, and I do like her as a fighter, I just don't see it being this fight, unfortunately. She does have advantages though. Over Shevchenko, and one of them is the physical advantage in regards to the height, because she's got a 4-inch height advantage over Shevchenko. And with the way that Chookagian fights, she does try to fight quite long, has a nice popping jab, tries to keep range, uses low kicks and, kicks up and down the body as well. She does have that long style of fighting. So Shevchenko is actually going to have to work a little bit, I think, in this fight to close the distance, get inside to land her shots. And Chookagian's striking isn't bad either. And if she can keep on the outside, I mean, I'm just presenting potential path to victory is, for Chookagian. This is a mixed martial arts fight, 4-ounce gloves, anything can happen. So I just feel that if Chookagian can stay on the back foot, can keep at range, and she can do that discipline for 5 rounds, it may steal her some rounds in this fight. And I don't think it's going to be a clean 50-45 sweep either. So I do think Chookagian might win a round or 2 at most, but like I say, it's a very, very tough ask. I actually think Shevchenko's gonna use a lot of wrestling and grappling in this fight with Chookagian, just purely because of how Chookagian fights. Like I said, she's 4 inch taller, she fights long, she got the nice jab. So I think if this fight is kept on the feet, I just think Shevchenko, I think she will still win the fight, but I just think she will have to work a lot harder to win the fight than what she would if she just closes the distance that one time and takes her down and grapples her, and that also gives her the chance of a submission as well. However, it is worth noting that Katlyn Chookagian is a Renzo Gracie brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so, you know, it's not as if she's a slouch on the ground either, but going style on style, I just think I think Shevchenko's just slightly better everywhere. Like I say, from a skill perspective, I think she's the better technical striker. I think she's the better wrestler. I think she's the better grappler. And I just feel that Shevchenko's got multiple options of where to take this fight. She could take what I believe is going to be the harder route on the feet, or she can take the fight to the mat, which, like I say, I don't think is going to be easy by any stretch, but it's going to be more comfortable for her, I believe, than what it would be on the feet. I don't think Shevchenko's gonna grab a submission or a knockout in this fight. I think it's going to be another fight that goes to decision. So for that reason, I'm going to take Valentina Shevchenko to win. I'm going to take her to win via decision. And in the next fight, we've got Juan Adams versus Justin Tafa in the UFC heavyweight division. We've got Juan Adams, the minus 240 favourite, the comeback on Justin Tafa plus 200. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised that this fight is in the number 3 slot on the main card, but you never know with those heavyweights what you're going to get. It's either going to be an absolute cracker and someone getting knocked out cold, or sometimes we've seen them go horribly wrong where the guys gas out after 2 or 3 minutes, and it's a lot of standing around doing nothing. But this is a really interesting fight because these guys are big, strong, as you expect, heavyweights. I mean, Justin Tafa he's only got 4 professional fights on his record at the moment, but man, he's just such an aggressive guy. If you go back and look at any of his 3 fights before he joined the UFC and XFC, I mean, he won all 3 of those fights via knockout. He's got power in his hands. He's only quite short for a heavyweight at 6 foot, but he tends to weigh in on the on and around the heavyweight limit. So he's packing some power. As with Juan Adams, he again is another guy who weighs in around the heavyweight limit, but he's a lot taller. He's got that height and reach advantage at 6'5". He's got a whole 5-inch height advantage on Justin Tafa, but for me, Juan Adams, I've been a little bit disappointed with him since that Chris De La Rocha fight. I mean, he won in the Contender Series against Sean Teed. Obviously, got the first round victory via ground and pound, and then he beat up De La Rocha, who's had a head like steel in that fight, and took everything that Adams had. Eventually, Adams had to throw the kitchen sink at him in round 3 to finally finish him off, but bit disappointed against Bueller and Greg Hardy in the last fight. I know Greg Hardy obviously is a tough, athletic guy, but yeah, Adams kind of shot him for that takedown very early on in that fight. Got reversed. Hardy ended up on top, and Adams just kind of held on to the single leg while Hardy just rearranged his face with hammer fists, and eventually the referee stepped in, and it's going to be interesting to see how Adams comes back from this fight. I think I always tend to say on these podcasts that if you're looking down the barrel of your 3rd straight defeat, that you're always looking down the barrel of your UFC marching papers, unfortunately. But I think it's a little bit different in the heavyweight division because it's a bit of a thinner division, and heavyweight's a bit of an anomaly. Sometimes you can get really good heavyweights that go on a bit of a losing streak because of the power they hold, and it only takes one shot in that division to be put away. But it'd be interesting to see how Adams approaches his fight as he's looking at potentially a 3rd straight defeat. Justin Tafa, like I say, he's very, very powerful. He's very strong. He's very aggressive, but that worries me. I mean, we saw it in his fight against Yorgan De Castro that they spent a good minute and a half or so tied up in the clinch against the fence, and I think that frustrated Tafa, and literally he came almost running and sprinting at De Castro with his right hand cocked, ready to throw that big power right, and De Castro just countered it nicely and put Tafa away. And I think for me, if Tafa telegraphs those shots again in such a manner. I think that he's the kind of guy that can get countered quite often because that you just can't go doing that at UFC level. You can't show your opponent what you're going to do with such blatant, obvious disregard in the way that he did in that fight against De Castro. And I think if he does something similar against Adams has power as well. He can land that one shot, and whether it knocks Tafa down or whether it knocks him out cold, I think you get the win. But maybe you never know with because Tafa's only 26 years old. Sorry, he's only got 4 fights under his belt. Things like that can be improved upon very quickly. If he was doing that kind of thing still 20 odd fights into career, just winging bombs and not really setting up his shots, I'd be extremely worried. But as he's so green, he's so raw at the moment in his professional career, that's something that with a good gym you can turn it around pretty quickly, and you can kind of iron out those errors. So it is going to be interesting to see how he comes back in this fight. But yeah, for me, I think Juan Adams is going to edge this fight, and I think he's going to get the win. I think that height advantage is going to pay dividends. He's tall, he's got that long jab. I mean, I know we only saw 40 odd seconds of the fight against Greg Hardy, but straight away he was looking to pop that really heavy jab. If he can do that and keep Tafa at the end of it, if he can then get Tafa frustrated and throwing wild bombs, I think he can counter. I also think Adams has the ability to spend some time clinching up against Tafa and holding him against the fence when he needs to. For that reason, I'm picking Juan Adams to win this fight, and I think he wins it later on again, similar to the De La Rocha fight. I think he'll either land a counter shot when Tafa gets frustrated, and he'll get the victory.
I just want to talk a little bit about this fight. I've got a couple of things to mention with it. Firstly, this is the third fight from the end of a pay-per-view card, and it's lower tier UFC heavyweights fighting. Juan Adams is on a 2-fight losing streak. Tafa is on a 1-fight losing streak from his UFC debut, so this is only his second fight in the UFC. To me, it makes absolutely no sense why this fight is so high up on a pay-per-view portion or on a pay-per-view card. So it's a bit crazy. And the second thing that's crazy is the betting lines, because Juan Adams at -240 is absolutely insane. Now, spoiler alert, I do think he wins this fight, but the odds are just crazy. Like, I just don't see how Juan Adams, or what Juan Adams has done to sort of justify being, a moderately large favourite. And -240 is fairly steep, From the other side, this is where the line's coming from, because from the other side you've got Tafa, who has only had 1 fight in the UFC. He did get knocked out. It was, relatively bad fight IQ that led to the knockout. In fights before the UFC, he has shown that he does gas a little bit later on in rounds, but so does Juan Adams. When you look at one-shot knockout power, when you look at technical striking, Justin Tafa by far is the better technical striker, by far has the more power. And this is a heavyweight division, one punch on the chin and, that's it. It can be lights out. However, on the other hand with Juan Adams is the fact that he has that wrestling background. So he has the option to go for takedowns. If he gets on top of Tafa, I'm quite certain that Tafa isn't going to get up until he's either finished or the round ends. And the longer that goes on, so if Juan Adams doesn't finish him, the longer that top control, that top time goes on, the more tired Tafa's going to become. Then when it's stood back up for the next round or whatever, or if he does stand back up, he's going to get taken down again because he's tired. And then once he's tired, he's going to struggle to get back up, and it's going to be one of those fights where it just gets easier for Juan Adams as it goes along. But man, you just don't know what you're going to get with Juan Adams. Is he going to shoot takedowns? Is he just going to be happy? Is he going to test his striking? Is he going to want that big knockout to put his name back on the map, opposed to coming off a 2-fight losing streak, taking a fighter down and laying on top of him for 3 rounds? Does he have that fire? Does he think, what? The UFC need to know my name again. The fans need to know my name. I'm on a John Jones card. These people need to know who I am. Does he go out there with that mentality and try and knock Tafa out? Because if he does that, Tafa is going to knock him out. So it's, like I say, it's one of those fights where I'm just finding it so hard to call. If this fight does go into round 2 and round 3, who's going to be more tired? Are they both just going to be gasping for air and the volume's so low and then it is going to go on to a decision? There's a lot of questions about this fight and there's a lot of question marks, especially surrounding both fighters. Now, I'm going to lean towards the wrestling side of Juan Adams. I think that he has to come out with that mentality of, I get that he might think, oh, okay, it's my big opportunity to get a knockout on a big card and put my name back on the map on the UFC heavyweight division. But he's got to get the win first and foremost. That's got to be the only thing that he needs to think about. And if he does have that mentality, which I tend to think that he will, he's going to go out there and he's going to take Tafa down. He's going to, wear him out on the mat, be heavy on top. I think it will go into, the later rounds. And in that scenario, I do think Tafa gets so tired, and then Juan Adams comes along with the ground and pound, starts laying it on him thick towards the end of the fight, and finishes him. So I am going to take Juan Adams to win, and I'm going to take him to win via knockout. And in the next fight, we've got a really good fight here. It's one of my favourite fights on the entire card. It's Mirsad Bektic versus Dan Ige. Bektic currently the minus 130 favourite with the comeback on Dan Ige at plus 110. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm going to echo exactly the same thing that you've just said, in that that this is one of my favourite fights on the fight card, man. This is possibly my favourite fight on this fight card. Actually, I think I'm probably more excited for this fight than I am the main event with Jon Jones fighting. And yeah, this fight has the potential to be really action packed, to have fireworks. Obviously, I know that Mirsad Bektic is coming into this fight off a loss. He lost to Josh Emmett in his last fight, but he had back-to-back wins prior to that against Ricardo Lamas and Godfredo Pepe. Obviously, again before that, he lost to Darren Elkins, but that was possibly, if you haven't seen that fight before, go and watch it, because that just showed the true level of heart that Darren Elkins had, because Bektic literally beat him up to a pulp for 2 rounds, and then Elkins came back when Bektic started to slow in the 3rd round. Dan Ige has really turned a corner, in my opinion, in his last few fights. I mean, he's now looking he's on a 4-fight win streak, wins over Kevin Aguilar, Danny Henry, Jordan Griffin and Mike Santiago, and he's looking a really, really good, solid prospect in this division. He's got a good skill set. He's very well rounded, and for me, this fight is going to play out really interestingly, because Bektic, for me, is the better wrestler too. He's got really good wrestling. I know he spent some time before training with Jordan Burroughs, who I know is a fantastic collegiate wrestler out there in the United States. Bektic has a wrestling background, but he's also a very capable and solid striker. Now, the Josh Emmett fight, I think he relied a bit too much on that striking. He didn't attempt any takedowns from what I recall. I know Josh Emmett is a good wrestler himself, so maybe he thought that he wasn't going to get those takedowns, so he wasn't going to attempt them. But my favourite Mirsad Bektic is the Mirsad Bektic that throws in those takedown attempts, even if they're not always successful. Just that thought in the back of your mind as his opponent, that Bektic is a good solid wrestler. He is looking to take me down. It kind of just gets you second guessing. It kind of just makes you think before you strike. It makes you a little bit more cautious when you're attacking, because you don't want to throw caution to the wind and have Bektic duck under one of your strikes and take you down. So it's going to be really interesting. But like I say, Bektic has got good striking. We saw that against Josh Emmett. He's got a really good and a technique that he utilises over and over again is that 1-1-2. He used it so many times against Josh Emmett. Throws the double jab and then throws the right hand straight behind it. And as much as it worked, and I like that combination, it also worries me because he does tend to come forward in quite a linear motion, head down the centre line when he throws it, especially against Josh Emmett. There's a couple of times where Emmett nearly caught him with a counter strike, and he nearly just slipped back that pullback counter shot, and then eventually it was when Bektic kind of came stepping in, looking for what I think was that 1-1-2 again, that Emmett landed the power jab and put him down and finished off with the ground and pound. And for me, Ige, his opponent, he has good solid top pressure when he gets on top. I don't think his wrestling is as good as Bektic. I don't think his takedown ability is as good. I don't think his offensive wrestling is quite as good, but he has solid top control. When he gets on top of you, he's got a good base. He lays a good foundation. He's sensible with his ground and pound. He doesn't open up any opportunities really for too many submission attempts. I know that he had to work his way out of a couple in there. I think it was the last fight against Kevin Aguilar, but as a general rule, he keeps it pretty steady on the ground, lands some heavy shots, does enough to whilst in the guard to stop the referee from separating them, then looks to advance position. But it's just a case of whether he can get the fight to the ground. So if the fight stays standing, again, it gets quite interesting, because for me, Dan Ige is probably the slightly quicker and slightly more elusive striker. Bektic, I think, throws with more power when you look at his fight, especially again that Josh Emmett fight. He's throwing everything with knockout intentions, whereas I think Dan Ige probably looks to throw his strikes a little bit quicker, but with not quite the same amount of power. So if this stays standing, it's going to be really interesting, because you've got Bektic, who they're both very capable strikers. You've got Bektic, who's throwing power shots, and then you've got Dan Ige, who's a bit more elusive, a little bit quicker, I think, with his striking, but possibly not doing as much damage and not quite as heavy-handed as Bektic. So it's really, for me, this fight depends on how Bektic plays it rather than what Dan Ige does in particular, because I think if Bektic decides to mix in takedowns and takedown attempts, I think he will win this fight. I think he will take a decision. I think he'll be able to have an equal measure of success striking. Maybe the striking will slightly favour Ige, but then when he lands those takedowns and has some top time, lands some ground and pound, those close stand-up exchanges will then obviously lean towards Bektic in the judges' eyes, because he's got that takedown. But if he decides not to throw in takedown attempts, if he decides just to keep this standing, I think this could be a really close fight, and I think it's a fight that Dan Ige could definitely win if like I say, he stays elusive, he stays quick, keeps moving his head off the centre line. Watch out for that 1-1-2. If he can slip those strikes and land his counter, I think he'll have a great deal of success. But for me, I think Bektic is just going to edge this fight. I do think he's going to mix in some takedowns, but I think it's going to be an absolute banger. I think both guys are going to still trade heavy on the feet. I do think there will be a lot of striking exchanges. I think it's got potential to be fight of the night. But for me, I'm going with Mirsad Bektic to edge this and win via decision.
Yeah, like I said at the start of this introduction, this is one fight I'm definitely looking forward to, and I've been high on Bektic for a long time, and purely because of his style. Everybody knows that I love wrestlers, and when he came into the UFC, he was double legging everybody into oblivion. His wrestling is very, very strong, and I know I faded him against Josh Emmett, but I did that at a decent plus money line. I think it was like plus 140. Emmett got the finish in the first round. I didn't quite expect it to go like that, but I saw advantages that Emmett had. And for me, Emmett is one of the best fighters in the division, and certainly the hardest hitter in the division. So, there was reasons for that. But Bektic as a fighter, I've been really high on him for a long time, and Dan Ige is another fighter. In his last fight out, really, really impressed me. Again, I bet him as an underdog. I think it was, again, around the plus 140 line. I can't remember the exact number, but, I expected him to go out there and put on a good performance and take the win, but I did not expect him to put on a striking clinic against Kevin Aguilar. I thought it was going to be a more wrestling-based fight from Ige's point of view. So, to me, this fight is just unbelievably great stylistically, because Bektic is, like we've already mentioned, is a very strong wrestler. Dan Ige's jiu-jitsu, his wrestling isn't as good as Bektic's, but his jiu-jitsu for sure is very, very good. And he can create scrambles, he can get sweeps and reversals as long as he doesn't get his back flattened to the mat. And this is one area that worries me about Ige, because if Ige's opponent can take him down, can settle him, and can get his back on the mat, Ige in tape doesn't really show too much urgency to really get back up to his feet or to sweep or to reverse or throw up a triangle or an armbar. He does tend to lay there for long periods on his back, and that's definitely a worry against Bektic. But Bektic has got to get him to that point where he's flat on his back, and that's not easy because, like I say, Ige does create scrambling opportunities, and if it's against the cage, he uses the cage really well in these scrambling opportunities, and also to stand back up and reset as well. So from this wrestling and grappling perspective, I think it's very, very interesting. Now, a worry from Bektic's side for me is his chin, because, you know, he got knocked out. Well, he didn't get knocked out by Josh Emmett, but he got brutally finished. But it all started from a snapping jab. Now, admittedly, obviously, Emmett does hit hard, as I've already mentioned. There is pop on the jab, but he got dropped hard by a jab, which is concerning considering you go back and watch the Darren Elkins fight where he dominates him for almost 3 rounds, and then they stand back up, and then Elkins finishes him, and that was a horrible knockout. So for me, the worry for Bektic is his chin at this point. Now, Dan Ige is not really known as a knockout guy, a guy that carries huge power. But listen, like I say, in that Kevin Aguilar fight, he really, really impressed me, and he hurt Aguilar multiple times. And Aguilar is a very, very tough fighter. You know, he's gonna almost take a sledgehammer around his dome to put the dude out. You know, and Ige tried everything, but he was hurting Aguilar, and I just feel that if he has that sort of performance, and if he puts that sort of power on Bektic's chin to what he did against Kevin Aguilar, who, by the way, Aguilar is a very technical striker. He's more technical than Bektic. So I feel that if Ige can do that to Aguilar, he could do it to Bektic while this fight's on the feet, for as long as it stays on the feet. And if that happens, he will knock Bektic out. So again, I've got that's my worry for Bektic, and that's where I see Aguilar performing really well. Now, is Aguilar going to go out there and take Bektic down? I'm not too sure. I wouldn't rule it out, but I just feel that the better wrestler in regards to the takedown shots is Bektic. But whilst they're on the mat, that's when Ige can really start creating scrambling opportunities and reversing. And I actually think that when it gets in those positions, Ige's going to have an advantage. So I do think he's going to get taken down, but I think in the midst of that takedown shot, I think he's going to be able to create opportunities to get on top of Bektic. I think if he gets on top of Bektic, he can stay there, because, like I say, my worry for Ige was he's a little bit inactive off his back, but when he's on top, he's very active, always looking to pass, always looking to better his position, and he's got good top control as well. So I just feel that there's more advantages in this fight for Ige. If he can get on top, advantage. If it stays striking, I really like Ige to knock Bektic out. But this is I'm ultimately going, you know, this is going to be the first fight we go against each other, John. You know, I'm going to pick Dan Ige to win the fight. But this is, for me, something that you cannot ignore in mixed martial arts, something that's happening with Ige right now. It's the development from fight to fight. Ige is looking so much better every single time we've seen him. The Julio Arce fight in his debut wasn't that spectacular. Then he goes out there and blitzes Mike Santiago. Then he's got a tough fight against Jordan Griffin. You know, like I say, put through some adversity, got through it, got the win. Then he goes out there against Danny Henry and smokes him. Then he goes out there against Kevin Aguilar and puts on the best performance we've seen to date. The dude, you can't ignore development in this game. The dude is looking better and better each time. I actually think Dan Ige is going to knock Bektic out in some striking exchanges. I really don't trust Bektic's chin at this point. I've seen Dan Ige hurt someone really tough like Kevin Aguilar. I see him developing. I see him getting stronger. I see his punches getting crisper. I think his counters are better. And like I say, all fighters start standing. Bektic might score a few takedowns initially, but I think at some point on the feet, Dan Ige is going to land a shot that puts Bektic out. So I'm going to take Dan Ige to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. And in the last fight on the main card, we've got Derrick Lewis versus the heavyweight newcomer, Ilir Latifi. Derrick Lewis currently sitting as a -250 favourite with the comeback on Latifi +210. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is really interesting. Obviously, Latifi made the move up to heavyweight after suffering back-to-back losses against Volkan Ozdemir and Corey Anderson. And we've spoke before on this podcast about fighters moving up and the benefits of moving up and fighting at the weight class above where they're currently fighting. But for me, this one seems a little strange. You know, Latifi, I know that he's a big guy. He's built like a brick shithouse, and he's just pretty much pure muscle. But for me, he just doesn't. It's a strange move to heavyweight because I just don't think he has the frame for it now. If you've got a 6 foot heavyweight, I mean they're considered. We spoke in the breakdown earlier, the Justin Tafa breakdown. He's 6 foot, and I'd class him probably on the small side of heavyweight. But Ilir Latifi at 5'8" for a heavyweight, it really does worry me, especially going up against a big imposing guy like Derrick Lewis on your heavyweight debut. Lewis is about 6'3", 6'4", always weighs in on that heavyweight limit of 265 pounds. I believe he has to cut weight to get to the 265 pound heavyweight limit normally. It'll be interesting to see what Latifi weighs in, what sort of weight he comes in at. I'm imagining somewhere around maybe 230-ish, 240. But I think he's going to be giving up a lot of weight to Derrick Lewis. I think we definitely know he's going to be giving up a lot of size, as in height and reach. So for me, it's going to be really difficult for him to really impose himself in this fight. Now, both guys are known and talked about quite a lot for their gas tanks. Obviously, people have spoke before about Derrick Lewis gassing out. Ilir Latifi's notorious for gassing out. Him moving up to heavyweight, I don't think that's something that really helps his gas tank either, because he's so muscly and so big. I don't really think that that it's going to work wonders for him. Maybe the thing that will work wonders is the fact that the heavyweight division is slower, so he'll have some speed advantage over guys because they're slower. His opponents are slower. The pace of the fight is naturally slower, so maybe in that sense he may not gas out as quickly. But his own output, I still think, because he's all the oxygen needed to feed those muscles of his, I think I still don't think he's going to have a particularly great gas tank. And I think this fight is going to be quite a slow and plodding pace, with two guys throwing heavy bombs at each other. Latifi's a good wrestler. If he can get on the inside and get close to Derrick Lewis, it'd be interesting to see if he can take him down. I think he may be able to. Lewis is a guy that he can take down, but he has got pretty good explosiveness when he's on the mat to get back to his feet. But for me, Derrick Lewis, he's just going to be too big. I just think the fact that Lewis as well, he's a heavyweight that will, despite his size, he's a heavyweight that will throw in a lot of kicks as well. And I just think that Latifi's going to be on the end of everything. I think he's going to find it really hard with his frame, his size, 5'8". I think he's going to find it really hard getting on the inside to land his shots. Derrick Lewis has got a good chin, so although Latifi's nickname is the Sledgehammer, I'm not 100% sure whether Latifi will be able to put him away if he can land one shot, possibly. Obviously, with that extra weight behind him, you never know. But for me, I just think that Derrick Lewis is going to be too big in this fight, and I don't think that Ilir Latifi is the kind of, it's got the kind of style, the kind of tactic that can beat Derrick Lewis. I think to beat Derrick Lewis, you've got to be quick, agile, work well behind the jab, kind of the Alexander Volkov fight, just constantly moving, constantly elusive. I know that Volkov lost that fight, but he won 14 and a half minutes of the fight before he got
14
caught.
14 minutes 50 seconds.
Yeah, before he got.
I remember it well.
Before he got caught, and that was his own doing, really. I think that's the kind of style that you need to have to be able to be constantly moving, constantly quick, working behind the jab. And I don't think Latifi's going to be able to do that. I don't think he's going to be able to work behind the jab because of the size difference. He may be a little bit quicker because obviously coming up from light heavyweight, but I don't think it's in Latifi's nature to be the kind of guy who to be constantly moving, constantly throwing shots, 1-2s, and then slipping, moving. I just don't see it from Latifi. So for that reason, I think that Derrick Lewis is going to win this fight. I also think that as the fight goes later on, Lewis has shown that he still holds a lot of power in the later rounds. I do think he may be able to hit Latifi with something and set off a finishing sequence. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Derrick Lewis to win this fight. I think he wins via knockout later in this fight, round 3, possibly late round 2.
I mean, first and foremost, brick shithouse. And that's the first time you've sworn on this podcast, Jonathan. We don't need that poor language on here, my friend. But it's all good, man. So listen, when Latifi first announced he was going to heavyweight, I thought, okay, this is interesting. Wasn't too sure what to make of it, and then it comes out that his first fight is against Derrick Lewis. So not only has he moved up to heavyweight, he's probably picked the biggest fucker in the division, you know. So at that point, I'm thinking, what is the guy doing? But then the more and more you think of it, you know, take away the opponent side of it, I do sort of get it. You know, he got brutally knocked out in his last fight, but he took a big beating before that knockout before it anyway. Again, another fight that I bet and won in regards to Volkanov's to me. He did exactly what I thought he was going to do to Latifi. So then Latifi's been brutally knocked out. He's at a stage in his career where, to be honest with you, I don't mean any disrespect. I'm not sure how many more fights that the dude's got left. He probably doesn't want to cut any weight. I did hear somewhere online that he normally walks around at about 240 pounds, so I'd imagine he weighs in at about that as well. So he probably just wants fights now where he doesn't have to cut weight, and like you said, he might think that he's got a speed advantage moving up to heavyweight, but I really don't think that's the case at all. In fact, I think it's probably going to make him slower, you know, weighing in with more weight. So 5'10", Daniel Cormier is classed as a small heavyweight, 5'11". So Latifi's smaller than Daniel Cormier, and you know what Cormier can get away with in that division is speed. You know, he has got good speed on his hands. He's a quick mover. Latifi really isn't, and like I say, I think he is, you know, heading towards the latter end of his mixed martial arts career as well. So I really struggle seeing Latifi winning this fight outside of, you know, winging a big overhand and knocking Derrick Lewis out. But I mean, how many times have we seen Derrick Lewis knocked out with one punch? You know, he's a tough guy, and actually, even though it's Latifi moving up, actually when he's probably going to give away 20-25 pounds to Derrick Lewis, I think Derrick Lewis is still the faster fighter. You know, he's quite athletic for a really big guy, and I know that's crazy to hear for anybody that's listening, but you know, he does throw jump knees, he does throw head kicks, and yeah, he has his moments of inactivity. Of course he does. He's a big dude. It's heavyweight. You know, the majority of the fighters do. They have to, because they're so damn big. But you know, I just feel that Derrick Lewis is going to be the faster, more athletic fighter, and you know, most of his career he was fighting on like torn ACLs, MCLs, and he had issues with his back as well. He's had all that stuff fixed, all that stuff. The final thing I'm sure was his knees before his last fight that he got fixed, and then he obviously had his knees fixed. Then he had his back fixed before that, and then he went on this strength and nutrition program with this new guy. I don't remember his name, but he's now looking to improve his strength and conditioning. In his last fight against Ivanov, you know, there was a lot of clinching going on, a lot of tough work, and you know, he wasn't looking tired or anything in round 3. He did look better, even though it was a slow fight, in regards to like his physical health and his gas tank. So his corner, I think, said something like this was only phase 1 of it, so they're obviously going to continue with this as well. So there's a huge chance that he looks even better this time out as well. And like I say, I think Latifi coming off a bad knockout loss, I think he's moving up to heavyweight. He's picked, like I've said, probably the biggest heavyweight that he could probably pick, one of the most dangerous heavyweights that he could probably pick. You know, the guy that's just got fists made of stone. And listen, I'll say this right now: if Latifi takes anything like what Ivanov took, he is going out. I don't know how Ivanov was conscious in that fight. Props to Blagoy Ivanov, because I got no idea what that dude was made of. I thought at the time when I watched it, but when I rewatched tape, I was just like, wow, he hit him with clean elbows, clean knees, clean straight right hands. He hit him with everything, and the dude would not go out. That's not going to be the case here with Latifi. There is a chance that Latifi, because of the height difference, is going to be much closer to the hips. So taking Derrick Lewis down is definitely an option. Can he take him down? That remains. We'll find out on Saturday night. I'm not too sure, but if he does take him down, it's going to expend energy. Definitely lifting a guy at 265 pound up, and B, Derrick Lewis has got some of the most underrated get-up games I've ever seen in MMA. He'll lay there and he'll look like he's settled on his back, and you'll be thinking, come on, get up, and then suddenly he'll just explode and exit out of the weirdest position that you would never even think that an exit was even possible, and he'll just do that because he's just, like I say, he's big, he's powerful, he's explosive. So he's got some good get-ups as well. So if Latifi does take him down once or twice, I actually think that'll hurt Latifi more than do him good. So this is what I mean. I just feel like there's a lot of advantages on Derrick Lewis's side. He's also fighting at home in Texas, Houston, Texas as well. So there's that. I think Derrick Lewis is going to knock him out. I think Latifi might get a couple of takedowns early on. I think come the second round, he's going to be tired. I think he's going to back up to the cage. Lewis is going to throw an onslaught on him and just absolutely slaughter him against the cage. So I've got Derrick Lewis to win this fight. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. And with the main card breakdowns complete, we'll now quick fire off the remaining prelims. And first up is Trevin Giles versus Antonio Arroyo. John, who have you got?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this fight plays out. I mean, Trevin Giles hasn't performed badly in his last two fights at all against Mirsad and Zach Cummins. I think his own fight IQ cost him in that Mirsad fight, kept going to the ground with him. Would have done a lot better just standing up and trading, I think. Zach Cummins, I interviewed Zach Cummins after that fight, and Zach Cummins said that Giles hits hard, man, although Cummins got the win via submission. He said that right hand from Giles is dangerous, and that's his best weapon. That straight right. Now, Arroyo, obviously we saw him lose his debut against Andrea Muniz. He lost that decision. He's got a couple of wins on Dana White's Contender Series. That fight against Stephen Regman, he was utilising a lot of kicks, putting on a lot of pressure, piling on the pressure with the kicks before he eventually got the win via arm triangle choke. But I like Giles, although he's lost back-to-back fights. I think he's got good striking. He did some good things on the ground against Mirsad, who's a very dangerous guy on the mat. I just think it was his IQ that cost him that fight. I think if he keeps his fight standing with Arroyo, and he keeps landing that straight right, that big right hand of his, I think he can have success and get the victory in this fight. So I'm going with Trevin Giles to win this fight via decision.
See, I almost think it's the other way around here, because I think if it stays on the feet, Arroyo's leg kicks are just brutal, and I think he can beat Giles up on the feet. He's got good 1-2s as well. Arroyo, he's actually not a bad striker when you look at his style. But the one concern that I've got is gas tank with Arroyo, and also takedown defense. Now, he did get taken down a few times by Muniz, and Muniz did tire him out with top control. But part of me looks at Muniz and think, listen, he was a legit grappler, and that's what legit grapplers can do to you. Trevin Giles' jiu-jitsu is not on that level of Andre Muniz. So I do think that Trevin Giles should try and take Arroyo down if he wants to win this fight convincingly. But I'm not convinced that Arroyo goes down very easily. I think if anyone's gas tank wears going down the stretch, I think it's probably going to be Arroyo's. But if Arroyo's already 1 or 2 rounds up at this point and then ties in the third and sees out a decision, then he's going to win the fight. So for that reason, I think Arroyo's got more paths to victory to beat Trevin Giles in this fight. If it stays on the feet, he's going to land, those sledgehammer kicks and, come forward with his 1-2s, try and push Giles back. And if he can just stay vertical for a couple of rounds, or at least just get back up to his feet as soon as he's taken down, I think it'll definitely serve him well in this fight. So I'm actually going to take Antonio Arroyo to win. I'm going to take him to win via decision. And in the next fight, we've got Alex Morono versus newcomer Kalinn Williams. John, who have you got?
Yeah, it's going to be, again, this has got potential to be a fun fight. Morono's, he's a bit of a wild wild attacker. He'll throw a lot of hooks. He'll throw caution to wind. I think in his last 3 fights, that Song Kenan fight, the Zach Otto fight, and the Max Griffin fight in his last fight, we've seen a bit more of a patient and matured Alex Morono. I think previously he would go overboard with the aggressiveness, but he seems to have toned it down slightly and kind of knows when to use it, when to throw the bombs. But my worry with Morono is the amount of times he does tend to throw those hooks, those big looping wild hooks. If you can catch him with any kind of big straight shots, I think you stand a chance of hurting him and catching him. But he's a tough guy and he's a hard guy to put away if you do catch him. So you got to catch him clean. Fighting against the newcomer Kalinn Williams. I haven't seen a great deal from this guy, but from what I've seen, he's a pretty well-rounded fighter. He's got decent wrestling. He will mix in takedowns. He does like to throw a lot of kicks as well. I watched a bit of the Tony Harvey fight, and he mixed things in well there. And he looks a very solid all-round fighter. He looks like he's got decent power as well. When you look at his record, he's got first round victories over JP St. Louis, a victory 24 seconds over Bo Yan. He fought Jeremy Holloway in his last fight. But for me, Morono, his experience, is going to be too much. Like I say, he's a tough guy to put away. If he loses, it tends to be via decision, especially since he came into the UFC. But for me, it's going to be Morono. I think his aggressiveness, I think he's going to be able to land strikes. The fact that he utilises that aggressiveness at the right times now as well leaves him less vulnerable to those counter shots. And for that reason, I think that Alex Morono is going to win this fight.
Yeah, Morono made a great career decision moving over to Fortis MMA, and he has looked a lot better since he moved over there as well. And especially in his last fight against Max Griffin, like you said, John, as well, he has really sort of toned the aggression down a little bit, and he's starting to look a lot more technical, finding his strikes, becoming more accurate, becoming more efficient as well. So, like I say, it was a great career decision to move over there, and a lot of fighters have made that move and are performing well as well. Kalinn Williams on the other side, though, is a guy that I'm not, I'm always happy for mixed martial artists to get their shot in the UFC and to get their shot in the big time because, listen, they put the bodies on the line for us regionally and, they go through so much hardship having to hold down a few, multiple jobs and all that sort of stuff. So I do like it when a fighter gets the break, but I just, right now, and he could prove me wrong on the night, I just don't think, he's at that level just yet. And, he's got good ground and pound, and he is big, he's strong, he's aggressive. But it's just his technical striking for me. I just don't think it's anywhere close to the level of someone like Alex Morono, and he'll throw wild punches as well. It's almost like the old school Derrick Brunson, with the chin out in the air and marching forward and winging wild shots. And I just do not think that's going to cut it right now and against Alex Morono in this fight. So I think that Morono is going to have to weather a storm for sure, because I think Williams is going to be fired up. I think he's going to come out the traps like a bull, winging wild shots. But I think if Morono can get past that, which UFC vet experience tells me that he should do, I think Williams is going to tire a little bit the longer the fight goes on. And I actually see Morono scoring a late stoppage in the fight as well. So I'm going to take Alex Morono to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. And in the next fight, we've got Lauren Murphy versus Andrea Lee. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is an interesting fight because I'm kind of on the fence as to who I'm picking. I mean, Lauren Murphy looked really good in that last fight against Barella. Obviously got the win in the third round. She timed her opponent. She got a good read to land that knee and the follow-up strikes. No, sorry, she landed the uppercut to start the sequence. She read the shot coming in, and then she landed the knee to finish things off. And when you look at her career, she's only really lost to good solid opponents: Ciara Eubanks, Katlyn Chookagian, who we spoke about earlier on, Liz Carmouche, who challenged Shevchenko for the title recently, and Sarah McMahon, who's had a good solid career. But when you also look at her wins. I mean, she doesn't really hold any great wins on her record either. None of the real top or elite level fighters. So she's got that Barella win, Barb Honchak, and then you're looking at Kelly Fascholtz in the UFC, and then she's got wins in Invicta previous. But Andrea Lee, she's a dangerous opponent. She's long. She utilises those kicks well. She's very dangerous when the fight hits the mat. I still can't really work out whether I think she's better when she's on the ground. She's dangerous there, or whether she's better striking. She's a very well-rounded fighter, and obviously she lost a last fight. That's close split decision to Jojo Caldwell, but I do like Andrea Lee's versatility. Like I say, she's pretty well-rounded. She's good in the clinch. She's good when he hits the mat. She's a decent striker, and yeah, it's going to be a tough contest. I think it's going to be a close fight. I don't think either fighter is going to get the finish. I think it is going to go to a decision. But I'm edging towards Andrea Lee in this fight. I just think I just like the amount of tools she has in her arsenal. I like those kicks that she throws. I think Lauren Murphy may be slightly better with the boxing. She looked crisp in her last fight against Barella, but yeah, I think that Andrea Lee is going to edge this fight and win a decision.
Yeah, I totally agree with you when you said that. You don't know where she's better. Is she better striking? Is she better, wrestling and grappling? But I actually think that's a good thing, and I almost think it shows how solid she is everywhere. And I do think she is a really good all round fighter. And I think the key thing for me in this fight is, if it hits the mat, I think it's going to be Andrea Lee that's going to be offensive, that's going to use her wrestling, and that's going to look to settle on top of Lauren Murphy. The one thing she's got to be careful of, though, is Murphy's got really flexible legs. She can pull a leg over into go-go Pilates positions and stuff like that. So, she has to be very careful if she's going to stay in guard. But on the feet is where I think the fight's going to be won and lost. And I just see Andrea Lee being that bit quicker, that bit sharper, that bit accurate with the striking. I think she's going to be able to come in and out without taking too much damage from Murphy. Murphy does hit hard, and she's actually really strong as well, which is something, again, Andrea Lee's got to be concerned about, because Andrea Lee tends to fight women that aren't as physically imposing. So she's able to get away with striking. She's able to get away with, if she's taken down, she can stand back up. But Lauren Murphy is physically imposing. She could push Andrea Lee back up to the cage. She could pin her there for long periods, run the clock down, waste time on the clock, winning rounds, winning minutes, that sort of thing. So she has got paths to victory, in my opinion. But I just feel when you're looking at the technical abilities of these two women, I just think Lee is more superior as a striker. And like I say, if she is taken down, we've seen her getting taken down by Montana De La Rosa, who's a good grappler, and she was able to stand back up 4 or 5 times against her. So, I don't think that's too much of a concern if you're in the corner of Andrea Lee. But yeah, I think she's got more ways to win this fight. Like I said, just due to her being so well-rounded, she's just got to stay out of this physically imposing, a physical fight, getting into clinches too often, getting herself pushed back, pushed against the cage. But if she does that, I think she wins this fight, and I don't think she stops Lauren Murphy. I think, like you say, it's going to be a decision. So I'm going to take Andrea Lee to win. I'm going to take her to win via decision. And in the next fight, we've got Miles Johns versus Mario Bautista. John, who have you got?
Yeah, again, this is for me another quite close fight, and I'm interested to see how this plays out. Obviously, Miles Johns won his last fight, a very close split decision against Cole Smith. Cole Smith spent a lot of time on Miles Johns' back, from what I can remember, in that fight, and Johns did a really good job of fending him off, and managed to land enough when they separated to get the win. Bautista fought a very tough opponent in Jin So Son, who obviously had that really fun fight with Petr Yan as well previously. And I was impressed with Bautista in that fight as well. He landed some nice shots. He was quick on the feet. He was aggressive. I mean, both these guys are coming out of really good camps camps as well. We've got Bautista coming from the MMA lab with obviously John Crouch. He had Benson Henderson in his corner for his last fight, so he's got some really good, really experienced guys in his corner. And then you got Miles Johns coming from Fortis MMA. So for me, it's a battle of two good guys from two good camps, but for me, I like Mario Bautista to edge this fight. I think if he can get striking, if he can utilise his speed in the striking exchanges that we saw against Jinso Son, I think he's going to have some success in the stand up, and I think that'll be his path to victory. And I think he'll be able to edge the scorecard over Miles Johns. I don't think either of them are going to get a finish in this fight. I think it's going to go the decision, but I think it's going to be a fun back and forth. But I think Mario Bautista is going to get the nod and get the victory.
Yeah, when I started watching tape on this fight, I actually thought that Bautista was gonna be like the far more technical, versatile striker, and Miles Johns being obviously the dominant wrestler, and have that wrestler versus striker sort of stylistic matchup. But actually, when I was watching tape on Bautista, I just found that he wasn't as technical as what I remembered him to be in previous fights. And on the flip side, with Miles Johns, I thought he was actually a better striker than I remembered as well. So I actually think the striking's going to be quite close in this fight. Definitely Bautista has more weapons in regards to his striking because he will use kicks and throw kicks, but again, I don't think that's a good thing against a wrestler like Miles Johns, whereas Johns, he won't really throw too many kicks, but when he's in the pocket and he's striking, he will throw in combinations, and they do come quick as well. I just think with how wild Bautista is inside the cage, I think it's going to cause himself a lot of problems because he's going to come forward fast, and Johns has got a good reactive takedown, and if he doesn't get the takedown, he'll just grab the single leg, push him back to the cage. We saw Bautista being pushed to the cage against Son. We actually saw him taken down a couple of times against Son as well, and that's where Miles Johns is definitely strongest, pushing his opponents against the cage, being physical and then taking them down. And I just don't think Batista's got that game plan in to stay on the outside and pick apart. I don't think that's his style at all, but that's the style he'll need to adopt to beat Johns. And like I say, I just don't think he can do it. And if he does do it, I don't see him sticking to it for 15 minutes either. I think Johns is going to score takedowns in this fight. He's got the cardio and the wrestling ability to make that 2 or 3 takedowns, 4 takedowns, 5 takedowns. I do think Bautista will get up the majority of the time, but I just think it'll be an accumulation of the takedowns that if it does go to a decision, which I do think it will, that's where the judges will be looking. So I'm going to take Miles Johns to win this fight, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. And in the next fight, we've got Journey Newson against Domingo Pilarte. So John, who have you got?
Yeah, again, as the theme with this undercard, there's some really good close fights. Journey Newson in his UFC debut had a really tough fight against Ricardo Ramos, and obviously he lost that fight. He lost the decision, but it wasn't a terrible showing by any stretch of the imagination from Newson. I mean, we've seen Ramos. We've seen him beat people. I know his record hasn't been great recently, but he's a decent fighter, and he's gone up against some dangerous guys, and he did manage to take Journey Newson down on several occasions, and I think Domingo Pilarte will have to do the same in this fight if he wants to get the win. Obviously, that Colares fight, the last fight between the two of them, it was a close back and forth. I mean, Colares landed takedowns, Pilarte landed his own takedowns. There was a lot of time spent in the clinch and up against the fence. But if Pilarte can land takedowns on Journey Newson, I think he's going to edge his fight. If Newson can keep the fight standing, I think he has the better striking. I think he'll be a successful guy, but for me, I'm going with Domingo Pilarte to win this fight. I think he will be able to get the better of Journey Newson and edge the fight out and get the victory.
See, for me, when Pilarte came into the UFC, had his UFC debut against Colares, I really liked the guy. I actually bet him, and unfortunately, it left a sour taste in my mouth because of the way he lost. Because I just didn't expect him to be that sort of fighter that can get held and controlled for that long. But I really liked him in his Contender Series fight, although he was hurt. It showed adversity. He came back. He was aggressive, well-rounded. But in that Colares fight, like I say, he just didn't perform, and it could have been UFC jitters, I suppose. But then when you look at Journey Newson, he came in on to his UFC debut on short notice against Ricardo Ramos, who, I've been very high on him for a long time as well. Even through his losses, I still think the guy is absolutely super talented. And Journey Newson, when I watched that fight back, it actually really impressed me. I know he lost the fight, but he was matching Ramos in a lot of areas, and that's not very easy to do. I believe it's his dad that's got the boxing background or the karate background. Journey Newson started in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so the dude has been educated everywhere in MMA, and like I say, I was impressed with how he dealt with UFC jitters, UFC debut, short notice against a very good opponent, and I just feel that if he can put on that sort of performance, or there's a high chance he's going to look even better in this fight as well, that he can really take it to Pilarte. He's just got to watch the takedowns. He's got to watch getting tied up too much. But Newson's a big dude as well. He's got some strength. He's got some physicality about him, and I think it's going to cause Pilarte issues in this fight. So I don't think there's going to be a finish. I think both guys are going to be quite well matched stylistically, but I am going to take Journey Newson to win this fight, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. And in the next fight, we've got Andrea Ewell versus Jonathan Martinez. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is an interesting fight because Andrea Ewell's a guy that I can't really work out where he sits in this division and what his level really is. I mean, we've seen him beat Renan Barão. Obviously, Renan Barão is nowhere near the fighter that he used to be, but he came in on his debut in Brazil, beat Renan Barão via decision, lost to Nathaniel Wood. He got really found out on the ground in that fight. Nathaniel Wood took him down with ease and dominated, locked in that rear naked choke in the third round. Then he fought Anderson dos Santos, got a decision victory in that fight, and then he fought when he made that step up again, Marlon Vera, who for me is that similar sort of level to Nathaniel Wood. He lost again, third round ground and pound, and it's kind of tough. I think he's kind of struggling at the moment in that kind of mid range between your Marlon Veras, your Nathaniel Woods, the guys in and around that top 15 or so, and the guys lower down in the division. Now, Jonathan Martinez, I'll be honest, I didn't think too much of him when he came in and made his debut against Andrei Sukumtar. I know that was a short notice fight. Andrei Sukumtar, I'm not overly hyped about. He's an okay fighter, but I don't think he's particularly great anywhere. But as Martinez has developed over the last couple of fights, I know you spoke earlier about seeing fighters progress and develop. I think we've definitely seen that with Martinez. Again, I don't know whether it's a case of UFC debut jitters, but he got a solid decision win against Luigi Buran, and then a really nice third round finish with that big knee in his last fight against Pingguan Liu as well. So he seems to fight who's on the up, and striking battle, I think it's going to be interesting. Jonathan Martinez, I think he's slightly quicker. Andrea Ewell, he's tall, he's got that long rangey jab, he throws good kicks as well. I think if Ewell's going up against a guy who would threaten takedowns or could take him down, I think I'd definitely be picking against Andrea Ewell in this fight. But we haven't really seen Martinez do anything other than strike. He's not particularly a heavy wrestler. I know he landed a takedown in both of the Luigi Buran and the Sukumtar fights, but I don't think he's particularly the kind of guy who'll come out and just try and wrestle for the entirety of the 15 minutes. I think he's just a striker who occasionally throws in the takedowns when he sees the opportunity. But so for me, I think it's going to go back to Andrea Ewell, my favourite pattern of alternating wins and losses. I think he's going to get the win in this fight. I just think that height and reach advantage. I think it's going to be a fight that does remain standing. I don't think Martinez is going to try and overly take him down often. So for that reason, I think that you might be able to just keep him at his range throughout the entirety of the fight, and edge the decision. So yeah, I'm going with Andre Ewell to win this fight via decision.
Yeah, see, I agree, and I disagree with some of the things you've said as well, and then sort of part agree. Because it's a bit of a weird one, but I'll explain what I mean. So, in regards to the development of Martinez, I bet Martinez last fight. It seems to be a trend of this fight card that it's just full of fighters that I previously bet quite recently. So, I bet Martinez. I think it was a plus 175 underdog against Ping Guan Lu, and up until that flash knockout knee late in round 3, I was quite nervous because we're about to go into a split decision, and that brings me on to the development thing that you spoke about, because I do see development in Martinez, but I don't think it's drastic enough. So I thought that when prior to the Liu Pingguan fight, and that's ultimately why I bet Martinez. I was seeing these developments. I knew he was with Mark Montoya at Factory X, all these sort of things that I really liked, but then when I was watching that fight, I feel that Martinez tried coasting quite a lot, and like I say, it was about to go into a split decision, I'm pretty sure, before that knockout. And even when you look back at the statistics of that fight, it was it played out predominantly on the feet. I don't think anybody even shot a takedown, and even though the fight was finished late in round 3, so we had the majority of round 3, and Martinez only landed I think it was 30-something strikes. It just wasn't enough volume, and it's not as if Liu Pingguan was some sort of elusive fighter like a Machida or an Anderson Silva. He was there to be hit if Martinez wanted it enough, and it just didn't seem like he did. And then the other thing that I sort of disagree with as well is in regards to the speed. I think the speed in the punching anyway is definitely on Andre Ewell's side. Speed in movement, again, I would edge to Ewell as well. But there's a few things that Martinez can do to win this fight. He's got to commit to his kicks. His head kick, he's not really set with anything, so he's got to set those up with hands. His low kicks have got to come, they've got to start, and they've got to stay. So what I mean by that is, in previous fights, he tends to throw the low kicks, and then, after 2.5 minutes, you very rarely see a low kick after that. It might be one or two per round at most. He's got to stick to those, because Ewell does recognise leg kicks and act accordingly when they're thrown against him. But the longer that fight goes on, the more kicks you're throwing, the less chance that Ewell's going to start to, react and deal with them accordingly, as good as what he did earlier on in the fight. So Martinez has got a game plan to win this fight. I definitely believe that, but I just think that the reach advantage what Ewell's got, I think he's good at fighting backwards as well as moving forwards. He's got some pop in his strikes. He's a little bit unorthodox as well. I just feel that speed and volume on a fight in the lower weight divisions that's likely going to go to a decision, which I think it will do, is always going to be favourable. So from a stylistic perspective, I think it's a really good fight, and both fighters are definitely going to have the moments in this fight. It's just, if it goes to a decision, the first things that you look at is who's landed more and how much have they landed, and who's looked better on the feet. And I just feel that, although in those 3 categories, I just feel that it edges to Andre Ewell. Really fun fight. I think it's going to go to a decision. I've got Andre Ewell to win it. And in the last fight of the night, we've got newcomers Austin Lingo versus Youseff Zalal. John, who have you got?
Yeah, both these guys coming in here making their UFC debuts. Both of them also coming in from the LFA promotion, who we spoke about many times before, has been a really good feeder promotion to the UFC. Similar, I kind of see LFA going off slightly. I kind of see LFA being the equivalent of Cage Warriors that we have over here in Europe and the UK. Sure. LFA are always passing over their fighters to the UFC, similar to the way that Cage Warriors do here. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, because you've got Austin Lingo, who's got heavy hands, he's got good power. When you look through his record, he's got a lot of finishes via strikes on there, especially early in the fight in round 1. Youseff Zalal, I don't think quite has the same level of power. He's a decent all-round fighter, but I think in the power front, it definitely goes to Austin Lingo. Interesting to see that Youseff Zalal's coming into this fight as well off the back of winning one of only his last 3 fights. He won in spectacular style with a flying knee against Jaime Hernandez in his last fight, but the previous 2 fights to that he lost back-to-back decisions. So interesting to see he got the call up off the back of that record in recent times. But for me, I think Austin Lingo is the slightly more developed fighter out of the 2 at this moment in time, and I think with those heavy hands, that power that he possesses, I think he's going to be able to finish Youseff Zalal in this fight and get the win via knockout.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with pretty much everything you've said. You know, it is a really good fight. Youseff Zalal seems to be the more technical fighter, a little bit quicker on the feet, will throw more weapons in regards to, you know, his leg kicks, and, you know, like you said, he's well rounded. He can look for takedowns as well. But Lingo's not easy to take down, and he's not bad off his back either. You know, he can stand up, or he will throw a cheeky armbar from guard. But the power that Lingo possesses at this weight class is scary, and we've seen it time and time again. You know, a punch lands behind the ear. It only takes one with him. You know, it's not as if he's got his fighters with the back to the cage turtling up and then he's unloading brutal combinations on them. He's literally, you know, he's coming forward, he's looking for his range, and then bang, that one right hand comes, and suddenly, you know, they're either scrambling, doing the chicken dance, or they're out cold. So Austin Lingo for me is a good prospect in the UFC. I'm glad he's been signed, and I'm really excited to see him in the cage, and, you know, opening the card as well. It's definitely going to be a good opener and set the tone for the rest of the night. So I think Austin Lingo is going to knock Zalal out, and I think he's going to have a good career in the UFC. And that's it for this week's podcast, guys. So John, before we hit the Newsome MMA mentions, what do you need to mention, man?
Yeah, just as always, hit me up on Twitter at MMA. Always like to talk fights and speak to everyone out there, get their opinions on upcoming cards, latest news, all that kind of stuff. Also, make sure you no doubt you're going to plug it anyway, but make sure you check out Newsome MMA. Just the YouTube channel in general, really, as well as the website. I mean, there's some fantastic stuff on there at the moment. I know the guys on the team are putting out some great interviews, and yeah, some really fantastic stuff on there. So make sure you check out all the recent interviews on the Newsome MMA YouTube channel.
Awesome. So now for the Newsome MMA mentions. First of all, I want to mention the Newsome MMA website, so don't forget to visit the outlet's website at newsomemma.co.uk, where you'll find prediction videos, fighter interviews, content collaboration with heavy-duty fight management. You can even request colour commentary and media coverage from Newsome MMA as well. And then next up is MMA Play 365, which I spoke about at the start of this podcast. MMA Play 365 is the perfect betting advice platform for any type of gambler, whether you're in this game for the long term or whether you just want some fun bets while watching the fights on the night. The goal is to make money, and that's absolutely what we'll be doing for you. And just one quick thing to mention with MMA Play 365 as well is we've now taken over the tape index feature, which used to be on Newsome MMA. This is obviously a great tool for any handicapper, any DraftKings player that is looking to save time whilst they're researching fights. It's now behind a paywall, but it's nothing too expensive. It's $3.99 per month for the work that goes into the tape index, for the amount of time that it's going to save you, for the ease of use. $3.99 per month is absolutely nothing. So you can follow MMA Play 365 over on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, or visit MMAplay365.com to subscribe today. The next mention is for Isagenix, who provides supplements, solutions and support to professional athletes, along with anybody who has an active lifestyle, whether that be practicing a sport or going to the gym. Be sure to check out the Amped Performance range of the products, which are perfect for athletes in all sports to increase energy and performance for when it matters most. Find out more at MMAplay365.com/Isagenix. And that's it from us, guys. Enjoy the fights on Saturday night, and we'll see you again for UFC 248.